Imagine for a second you're standing in front of this massive, heavy door. It's iron bolted shut. Behind that door is the truth. It's where you'd find the answers you desperately need. The legal records, sworn depositions, the chance to ask a doctor exactly what happened in that operating room.
But you can't get in.
The door is locked. And for a very specific group of people in Florida, it doesn't matter how hard they knock or how much they scream. That door just will not open.
It's a terrifying image, but for so many families, it's a literal legal reality. We are talking about a really high-stakes standoff involving Florida Statute 768.21, subsection 8.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a really complex and I think slightly uncomfortable, but incredibly important topic.
Definitely.
We're looking at what's being called the accountability gap. It's a situation where, the pursuit of a perfect outcome might actually be the enemy of getting any result at all.
Exactly. And we've got a stack of research here, but our primary source is a white paper that I have to say really shook me. It's titled, When the Pursuit of Perfect Compensation Prevents Practical Justice. And it's published by the group The Accountability Gap and Legalized Negligence.
And just that title alone, perfect compensation prevents practical justice. It sounds like a riddle.
It does.
So let's set the scene for you, the listener. What is the actual situation on the ground in Florida right now? Because I think most of us just assume, hey, if a doctor makes a mistake and someone dies, you can sue.
Right.
That's just how America works, isn't it?
Generally, yes. But in Florida, there is a massive exception. It's often called the free kill law by its critics, which is a brutal nickname, but it kind of describes the effect.
Okay.
Basically, if an adult, specifically someone over 25, dies due to medical negligence and they don't have a spouse or minor children, their surviving family, like the parents or adult siblings, cannot sue for pain and suffering.
Wait, hold on. So let me get this straight. If I'm 26, single, no kids, and a surgeon removes the wrong organ, my parents can't do anything.
Legally speaking, regarding a wrongful death suit for pain and suffering, no. They have no standing. The courthouse doors are, for all practical purposes, locked to them. They can't present evidence, they can't question witnesses, and they can't seek what we call judicial truth testing.
That is just wild. So naturally, the narrative we usually hear is pretty clear-cut, right? It's the grieving families on one side fighting big institutions, hospitals, insurance companies who want to limit their liability.
Right. And ideally, we want to repeal this law.
Of course.
Historically, yes. That is how the debate has been framed. The advocates want to repeal this statute to get justice. But this white paper, it raises a really uncomfortable question.
And what's that?
It asks, what if the advocates, by refusing to compromise, are actually the ones keeping the doors locked?
Which is a huge twist. It's suggesting that by holding out for everything, they're actually getting nothing.
Precisely. The paper suggests we need to distinguish between two concepts, symbolic justice and operational justice. And that really brings us to our mission for this deep dive, to understand why the pursuit of an ideal outcome might just be killing the chance for a practical solution.
Okay, let's unpack this standoff then. On one side, you have the repeal advocates. These are people who've lost loved ones. What is their non-negotiable demand?
Their position is rooted in induct principle. They believe that justice requires full access to the courts with absolutely no preset limits on what a jury can award. They want uncapped damages.
Uncapped damages. So if a jury decides a life was worth $50 million, that's what it's worth.
Right. The idea is that if a tragedy occurs, a jury of your peers should be free to decide the value of that loss. The legislature shouldn't be putting a price tag on it beforehand. They view any kind of cap as an insult to the victim's memory.
Which, honestly, that sounds fair in theory. If you lose a loved one to negligence, you don't want the state telling you, sorry, your grief is only worth this much because we said so.
It's a very, very powerful moral argument, but here's the counterproposal that's mentioned in the white paper. There are legislative reforms on the table that would open the doors. They would restore standing, meaning these families could actually file lawsuits and get into court.
But I'm sensing a but coming.
The compromise is that these reforms would come with a standardized or capped non-economic damages framework.
So what does that mean?
Basically, you can sue, you can get into court, you can depose the doctor,
Right.
but there's a limit on how much money you can win for pain and suffering.
And the source says the advocates are saying no deal.
Yes. The paper argues that the advocates are rejecting this compromise solely because of the cap. And this is where the dynamic gets so tense.
Right.
The paper asserts that this strategic rigidity is effectively maintaining the structural obstacle to adjudication.
So it's a high-stakes gamble. It's all or nothing. Either we get uncapped damages or we don't want the law changed at all.
And the result, currently, is nothing. The doors stay closed. The paper argues that if a legislative solution exists that would finance litigation, allow juries to hear cases, and ensure compensation, but it's rejected because of the cap, then the obstacle isn't just the statute anymore.
It's the refusal to accept the reform.
That's the argument.
Okay, let's talk about this specific proposal in the white paper. Because caps can sound scary, like they're just trying to save insurance companies money.
Sure.
But the paper lays out a specific framework that's actually pretty detailed.
They do. They propose a standardized award, specifically mentioning a $1 million cap on non-economic damages.
$1 million. And to be clear, we're talking about non-economic damages. We should probably clarify what that means for you.
Good point. So in a lawsuit, economic damages are things you can calculate with a receipt. Medical bills, lost wages, funeral costs. Those usually aren't capped. But non-economic damages are for pain, suffering, loss of companionship. And for the families we're talking about, maybe retired parents or adult siblings, the economic loss might be pretty small.
So the non-economic part is the whole ballgame.
It really is.
Okay, so the proposal is a flat $1 million for that pain and suffering. But here is a crucial detail that jumped out at me. The proposal states this cap should be exclusive of reasonable attorney fees.
This is massive. If you take nothing else away from the technical side of this, understand this point.
Unpack it for us. Why does exclusive of fees matter so much?
Well, usually in these types of cases, the lawyer works on contingency. They don't get paid unless you win.
Okay.
And their fee comes out of the award. Typically, it's 33 to 40%.
So if I win $1 million, the lawyer takes $400,000.
Exactly. And then you have case costs, expert witnesses, filing fees, which can easily run another $100,000, so the family might be left with less than half. But the real problem is what's called economic viability. If there was a cap of, say, $500,000 including fees, a lawyer is going to look at that and say, I can't take this case.
Because the math just doesn't work for their business.
Right. It costs too much to fight the hospital compared to what they might earn. So if the cap includes fees, the right to sue is an illusion.
You have the right, but you can't find a lawyer to help you use it.
Exactly. So this proposal, $1 million for the family, plus the lawyer gets paid separately, is designed to make sure lawyers are actually willing to take these cases.
It ensures litigation viability, as the white paper calls it.
That's it. It ensures the system is stable enough to let people actually file the lawsuits.
There's another part of this proposal that gets a little philosophical. The paper talks about equity and honesty regarding grief. It argues that we shouldn't be treating grief as a competitive market valuation.
This is a profound point, and it's where that symbolic justice idea really gets challenged. The authors argue that grief cannot be objectively measured. There is no mathematical formula to say one mother's loss is worth $5 million and another mother's loss is worth $500,000.
Yeah, it feels a bit icky when you put it that way, like, my grief is worth more than yours because I hired a better lawyer who gave a better speech.
Precisely. That's the distortion the paper warns about. Open-ended verdict systems can incentivize treating suffering like a commodity. You have to, perform your grief for a jury.
And if you're not likable enough, or if the jury's having a bad day, you might get zero.
Exactly. It becomes a lottery. The paper argues a standardized framework is actually more honest.
How so?
It says, we know we can't replace this person with money. Money is a poor substitute. But here is a substantial, predictable amount to acknowledge the loss, rather than making it a gamble.
So the argument for you listening is really about fairness. It's not about putting a price tag on a life, but ensuring the system treats everyone equally.
Stability and equality. Which brings us to the function of the courts. I mean, what are courts actually for?
Well, usually we think to get justice, to win, to get the bad guys.
But how do they do that? The source defines the judicial function as truth testing. Courts are designed to evaluate evidence, hear testimony, and determine negligence.
And right now, for these families in Florida, that isn't happening.
It's non-existent. Because of the statute, allegations remain untested, records remain unexplored, nobody gets deposed.
So the paper is emphasizing that when litigation is blocked, we lose the exposure of negligence.
Totally. So even if the payout is capped, Just getting into the room matters.
Immensely.
It matters immensely. The paper argues that a capped system that allows cases to proceed triggers the discovery process. You get the medical records, you get the emails where the nurses were complaining about staffing, you get the sworn testimony from the surgeon.
That's the operational justice part. Even if you can't win $50 million, you can force the hospital to explain what happened on the record.
Exactly. And the source makes a key insight here. Justice is not measured solely by the theoretical maximum remedy, but by the reliability with which meritorious claims can be heard.
I really like that distinction. It's better to have a reliable system that works for everyone, a flashlight that shines on the truth, than a lottery system that's closed to almost everyone.
But there's a counter-argument we have to address, and if you're listening to this and feeling skeptical, this is probably what you're thinking.
Right.
The advocates often say, we need those massive uncapped verdicts to deter bad doctors.
Yes, the big stick theory. The idea that if a hospital gets hit with a $50 million verdict, they're going to be really, really careful next time. It's about sending a message.
That is the common assumption. But this white paper challenges that head-on. It calls it the myth of the big verdict.
How so? Is it a myth that hospitals care about money?
Well, they care about money.
Yeah.
But the paper argues that medical errors usually don't stem from, like, deliberate risk-taking. It's not like a doctor's gambling with a patient's life on purpose, thinking, I hope I don't get sued.
So what causes the errors then?
The source lists specific examples: communication failures, workflow pressures, cognitive overload. These are systemic issues.
Like a nurse working a double shift, or a computer system that makes it hard to see the right medication dosage.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. A massive financial penalty 5 years later doesn't necessarily fix a broken workflow or a confusing chart system today.
So hitting them with a giant fine doesn't make the doctor less tired or the computer system less buggy.
Correct. The paper argues that real prevention comes from transparency, administrative oversight, and professional discipline.
And how do we get that transparency?
Through the feedback loop. And this connects right back to allowing cases into court. If you have a steady stream of adjudicated cases, even with caps, you generate records. You generate findings of fact.
Oh, okay, I see where this is going. If you have 10 lawsuits that all point to the same confusing software, the hospital actually sees the pattern.
Yes. The feedback loop between litigation and professional regulation depends on cases actually being heard. If the courthouse doors are locked because advocates are holding out for uncapped damages, that feedback loop is broken. The silence protects the negligence.
That is a really powerful point. By holding out for the big stick of a massive verdict, they might be throwing away the flashlight of discovery.
That's a great analogy. And this brings us back to the core conflict the paper identifies: symbolic justice versus operational justice.
Let's define those clearly for you, the listener, because this is the heart of our deep dive. Symbolic justice is.
Symbolic justice is the possibility of extraordinary awards. It's the idea that a jury could award $100 million as a statement on the infinite value of life. It's aspirational. It feels morally correct.
Okay. And operational justice.
Operational justice is the reliable functioning of legal institutions to expose wrongdoing. It's the boring, gritty reality of filing papers, doing discovery, getting a judgment, and getting a check.
And these two are at war in Florida right now.
They are. The advocates want the subtle, the uncapped potential. The paper argues that by demanding the symbol, they are sacrificing the operation, the ability to sue at all.
There is a quote in the source that really hammers this home. It says, "Justice delayed is not merely justice denied to individual families. It is also accountability denied to the system as a whole."
It's a hard truth. It implies that the current strategy is actually making hospitals less safe because the accountability mechanism is turned off.
This leads to the paper's uncomfortable conclusion.
Yeah.
And frankly, this is where the paper gets bold. It shifts the blame.
It does. It suggests that the primary obstacle might no longer be institutional resistance alone. For years, it was the lawmakers or the lobbyists blocking the door.
Right.
But now, if there is a compromise on the table that the advocates are refusing.
Then the call's coming from inside the house.
In a way, yes. The paper argues that the advocates' refusal to compromise is unintentionally contributing to the continued closure of the courthouse doors.
Now, we have to be super clear here. The paper isn't saying the advocates are bad people.
Not at all. And that is crucial. The source explicitly states this does not imply bad faith. It acknowledges that this advocacy comes from personal tragedy and moral urgency.
Of course.
These are people who have lost children, parents, spouses. Their desire for maximum accountability is completely understandable.
But the paper argues there's a disconnect.
A disconnect between what is morally desirable in the abstract and what is structurally achievable in practice. The paper is asking the advocates to be pragmatists, not just idealists.
It reminds me of that saying we hear all the time, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
That is exactly the theme here. The choice is between an attainable reform that opens the courts now, maybe with a $1 million cap, versus an ideal outcome, uncapped damages, that may never happen politically.
So if you're a listener hearing this, you might be thinking, well, I want full justice. But if full justice means waiting another 10 years while the doors stay locked, is it worth it?
That is the question. The paper concludes that a standardized framework, like the $1 million cap we discussed, represents a balanced institutional design. It's not perfect. It doesn't put a price on grief, but it reactivates the judicial process.
It gets the gears turning again.
It allows negligence to be exposed, evaluated, and corrected. And if the goal is accountability, you need the system to function. You need the machine to run.
This has been a really heavy but eye-opening deep dive. It challenges a lot of the usual narratives we hear about legal battles.
Yeah.
Usually we root for the underdog to get everything, but sometimes getting something that works is better than holding out for a fantasy.
It forces us to look at the mechanics of justice, not just the emotions of it. And that's hard to do when you're grieving.
So as we wrap up, I want to turn this back to you, the listener. We're calling you the learner for a reason. How often do we see this in our own lives or in other political debates, where the demand for a perfect solution actually prevents any progress from happening?
It's a universal tension, idealism versus pragmatism. We see it in healthcare, climate change, tax reform. Do you take the small win now or hold out for the revolution later?
The source leaves us with a final, provocative thought that I want to leave you with today. It says, the question is no longer simply whether the statute closes the courthouse doors. It is whether the refusal to accept a reasonable reform may now be keeping those courthouse doors closed.
That's the lingering thought. Who is really holding the key?
Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's a complex issue, and there are no easy answers. But understanding the machinery behind the headlines is the first step. We'll see you next time.